1 minute.
Yeah, maybe you can turn on your microphone, Miss. Thank you.
Tell me, please, can you see?
Yes, this is visible from our side, Miss.
Okay, let's start. So we talk today about internet advertising. What is this? One more time. What can I tell you about my presentation? That IT law has become a topic of discussion. Why? Because this 1 minute. 1 minute, please. To the dynamic development of digital technologies and their impact on everyday life. And we are witnessing the emergence of numerous rights, spontaneously or objectively determined by the practical needs of legal regulation, stock exchange law, information law, corporate law, intelligent law, intellectual law, property, medical, everybody, everything. And from the point of view of established general theoretical approaches to understanding the system of law and the system of legislation, these rights do not find a clearly definite time, a place of residence. Scientific, theoretical, and applied research on these rights also doesn't find an adequate expressions since such research in accordance with the established requirements should be conducted or everything within the framework of scientific specialties. Tell me, please, if everything is, you can see my presentation?
Yes, we can, but maybe it would be better to switch in full screen mode, yeah?
1 minute, Dmytro.
Just press F5.
Ой, 1 minute, not this. Так.
F5.
У меня такого, I haven't this. Сейчас, Дим. 1 minute.
Может быть, вид, вот там вот вкладка вид, там пошуршать.
Сейчас, зараз рисування. А я її просто не, ну, я її не бачу зараз. От, вид. О.
От там щось має бути.
Режим структури.
Режим чтения можна попробувати.
О. Є?
Yeah, it's okay.
Super. Okay. So, you can see these rights, the emergence of new rights. These rights do not have a distinct sectoral affiliation. They were formed at the intersection of different and are not covered. They are not covered. You can see that we have some spectacle our moment about IT and new rights. So they are not covered by existing scientific specialties. In various scientific studies, we can observe a rather free use of the concepts of institution of law, institution of legislation, branch of legislation, etc. Thus, systemic changes and a substantive revision of scientific specialties, they are needed. So let's talk about the digital environment. All of these newly emerging rights are emerging and developing on a private law basis. And these are positive process because they indicated the dynamic development of the private sphere of social relation and the adequate efforts of law to respond to such requests. Moreover, each of these rights is not pure in terms of their sectoral affiliation. Therefore, there is no need to to try to explain their content and essence based on the subject matter and method of legal regulation, of course. This emergence of these rights has objective explanation and a simple logic of their formation. There is a sphere of social relations that objectively exists regardless and of our subjective ideas, of course, and doctrines about law. The subject matter, method of legal regulation, and etc. For example, within the framework of intellectual property law, not only a specialist, but also an ordinary consumer wants to have a holistic view of who are its subjects, what objects are protected, under what conditions, principles, legal forms, and their use, what remains and inherent in it, what liability areas in case of infringement or intellectual property rights. It is these pragmatic needs, of course, that have created the concept of IT law as the law of the digital environment. This concept is primarily associated with the legal regulation of the creation, use, and protection, for example, of computer programs, the legal regime of websites, domain names, copyright protection in the digital environment, etc. The teaching of legal disciplines in educational institutions is based on sectoral approaches, views on the system of law, its elements, structure, and essence have remained virtually unchanged in the recent past since the Soviet times. This approach to the study of law generally has some positive results and can be useful for an introduction to the study of law and, of course, for the study of the legal system. Let's now talk about sectoral division of law. What is this? The sectoral division of law, with its defining criteria of subject matter and method, provides a certain systematic view of law. However, this approach cannot be fetishized, elevated to the rank of sacred and inviolable for the sake of the abstract purity of the subject matter and, of course, method of legal regulation. Now, can we call for a complete abandonment of the sectoral approach, but only as a means to an end? Systematic knowledge of law within the educational process. Of course, in order to provide a professional comprehensive response to various practical inquiries, one must already have a systematic approach to understanding law. And this is the main thing, which could only be built on its study as a system of legal norms, principles, mechanism, etc., and not a chaotic accumulation of regulatory material. Systematic knowledge of law. Let's talk about this. Today, however, sectoral approaches based on the subject matter and method of legal regulation create artificial obstacles to addressing practical needs. It seems that we are methodologically incorrect in our reasoning about law as a regulator of social relation, and there is a legal system of the state and there is a system of regulation. Undoubtedly, it should be built on certain principles as an integral system, but we adjust social relations to the needs of the system. We have formed views in the direction of the right to social relations, and if a social relationship doesn't fit the characteristic of the subject and method of legal regulation, then it is not ours. If they do not, then they have no right to exist. Isn't that why different rights appear which want to explain objective social relations and therefore violate established approaches? Perhaps the vector should be, how we see, directed in the other direction. From social relations to law, law is for social relations, for people, and not the other way around. Maybe some questions now, or we can...
The question will after end presentation.
I can go. Okay. Now, 1 minute, please. Okay, information law with IT law. What is this? Information law, the concepts of IT law and information law are the same because they refer to the law of information technology. But today, the content of these concepts is different. Science has formulated the concept of information law, which is primarily associated with public law, administrative law. However, this approach is clearly too narrow and lack perspective. Information law has become a complex branch of legislation and that combines both private law and public law provisions, consideration of information law exclusively from a public law perspective, and its scientific research in the same situation significantly impoverish our understanding of it. While information law covers the legal regulation of relation between various entities regarding the use of access to various types of information, public, private, commercial, official, state, secrets, and etc., establish the protection of the right to commercial information and defines the ways and means of protection in case of violation of the relevant rights. IT law is associated with the regulation of relations in the digital environment, and we can see this. The next, specifics of IT law. 1 moment. Specifics of IT law. This is understanding IT law is due to the specifics of functioning and manifestations of social relations in the digital environment. Therefore, it is not a question of any special law, but primarily of the specifics of functions, applications, and manifestation of legal norms regarding social relations in a special environment, of course, which is the digital environment. It is this environment that determines special legal approaches. First of all, to what extent is it possible to apply legal approaches to the digital environment? Obviously, the law should regulate only a certain segment of relations in it. After all, the digital environment is a parallel world to the real world. The same subjects, the same needs, motifs, etc., the same environment, the same mutual rights and obligations only in the digital environment. Just like in real life, law regulates only a certain area of social relations, going hand in hand with other social regulators, morality, religious norms, customs, national traditions, etc. The same is true in the digital environment, but in it, a certain subject or object is recorrected and recorded by a technical means at a real environment. But in it, a certain subject or object is, I can see and say, recorrected, recorded by technical means at a real moment and cases to exist at another moment. Therefore, legal regulation is influenced by technical factors that must be taken into account. The digital environment no borders, and this is very useful for us. The next, importance of ethical behavior. What is this? Legal regulations in the real world is primarily related to the national regime. The mechanical transfer of national legislation and its imposition on the legal regulation of relations in the digital environment is impossible precisely because of the virtual nature of this environment. Therefore, ethical behavior is of primary importance for the digital environment. Codes of professional ethics are the basis for its functioning. Of course, there will be studies of the essence of IT law, of course, as a branch of or sub-branch of law, legislation, its nature, manifestation, etc. After all, they have the right to exist. The real world and the digital environment are different spheres, and we must understand this. Not the only ones. Rapid progress will give rise to others of the functioning of social relations and the law that regulates them. One moment. Unification of legal approaches, unity. The unification of legal approaches is necessary to achieve effective interaction between different entities. International law acts have been adopted to unify national regulatory regimes, and globalization has led to the necessity of unifying legal approaches. Between real world and digital environment? In real world, we can see regulate social relations primarily related to national regime and subject to national legislation. In digital environment, regulates only a certain area of social relations, requires ethical behavior, and requires unification of legal approaches. International legal acts, now we can talk about. IT law is, first of all, a special function of real-world legal norms in the digital environment. The international community has developed and is implementing systematic approaches and principles for regulating relations in the environment. These include various social regulators, customs, moral and ethical norms, and legal norms. A number of international legal acts have been adopted. For example, the model law on electronic commerce of the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law of December 16, the model law of electronic signatures of the United Nations Commissions of International Trade Law. Then we can see about then we can see the United Nations Convention of the Use of Electronic Communications in International Contracts. One moment. Then of the European Parliament, protection of consumers in distance contracts, on the system of electronic signatures in use, the commerce electronic and etc. So these acts are characterized by the desire to unify national regulatory regimes, taking into account the supranational cross-border nature of the digital environment. In fact, it is in this area that the unification of legal approaches is not so much desirable as necessary to achieve effective interaction between different entities, regardless of their citizenship, location, and other means of individualization, of course, which are associated with the legal status of a person as a subject of legal relations in accordance with the requirement of national legislation. So let's take a look at Council Directive on the approximation of the laws, regulations, and administrative provisions of the member states relating to misleading advertising. This. If you can see, the state relating directive was adopted to address the significant variation in laws on misleading advertising across the member states. It aimed to mitigate the impact of misleading advertising on the common market, competition, and consumer welfare. The directive also sought to harmonize national provisions on misleading advertising and ensure an adequate level of consumer protection. This about Council Directive. Impact of misleading advertising. What is the main theme? Why was it adopted? Whereas the laws on misleading advertising in force in the member states vary considerably, whereas as advertising transcends the borders of individual member states, it has a direct impact on the establishment and functioning of the common market. Whereas misleading advertising may lead to distortions of competition within the common market. Advertising, whether or not it induces the conclusion of a contract, affects the economic welfare of consumers, whereas misleading advertising may induce consumers to take decisions detrimental to them, which purchasing goods of the property or using services. where the public in general, as well as consumers and all those engaged in trade, business, crafts and business, craft or profession, have an interest in the harmonization of national provisions of misleading advertising in the first instance, and in the second instance in the harmonization of unfair advertising, and where appropriate comparative advertising of the basis of a relevant commission, whereas for this purpose, minimum and objective criteria for determining whether a particular advertisement is misleading should be established. Of course, we can talk about this for a very long time, so I will not be stay at this. Let's talk about more popular and more useful thing. Directive objectives. What is this? Directive is, if you can see, directive objects have some very useful appropriate states. For example, when determining whether an advertisement is misleading, all of its features and in particular any information it contains must be taken into account. First of all, the characteristics of the goods or services, such as their availability, nature, performance, composition, method, and date of production or delivery, fitness for a particular purpose. Propose, quantify, detailed description, geographical or commercial origin, or results expected from their use, or the results and physical parameters of tests of inspections performed on those goods service. The second, the price of the manner in which the price is calculated and the terms of supply of goods or services. Then the nature of their advertises activities, attributes and rights, such as its identity and assets, its qualifications and ownership of industrial, commercial, or, for example, intellectual property rights, or its awards and honors. Member states shall ensure that adequate the effective means of controlling misleading advertising are in place in the interest of consumers, competitors, and the public at large. Such means include legal provisions under which persons and organizations and deemed to have a legitimate interest in prohibiting misleading advertising under national law, and may do so file lawsuits against such advertising and or bring the fact of such advertising to the attention of administrative authorities authorized to decide on such complaints or initiate appropriate prosecution. It shall be for each member state to decide which of these opportunities should be provided and whether courts or administrative authorities should be able to require the prior use of their established means of dealing with such complaints, including those referred to in Article 5. Subject to the provisions referred to in paragraph 1, member states shall grant powers to the courts of administrative authorities to enable them to take such measures where they consider them necessary, taking into account the interests of all parties concerned and in particular the public interests. This criteria for misleading advertising. So issue a cease and desist order or initiate legal proceedings to order prohibition of publication or initiate a court case to issue an order such publication, even if this is no evidence or actual loss or damage or similar intent or negligence on the part of the advertiser. Member states shall also provide for the measures referred to in the first subparagraph to be implemented on an accelerated basis or having a temporary effect, or those that have a final effect, provided that each member state decides which of the two options to choose. In addition, member states may grant powers to the courts of administrative authorities to enable them to eliminate further effects of misleading advertising that has been stopped by a final decision, and demand publication of this decision in whole or in part and in such form as they deem appropriate. Demand in addition the publication of a statement of refutation. The administrative authorities referred to in paragraph 1 shall have such a composition that the in particular is beyond topped, have sufficient powers to decide on complaints over effective compliance with these decisions and enforce compliance with those decisions. As a rule, provide reasons for their decisions if the powers referred to in cause. I'm sorry. Decision, as a rule, provide reasons for their decisions if the powers referred to in clause 2 are exercised exclusively by an administrative body. The reasons for its decisions shall always be provided. Now, please. One moment. In addition, in this case, it is necessary to provide for procedures by which the unlawful or unjustified use of their powers by administrative bodies or the unlawful or unjustified failure to use their powers may be subject to judicial review. European Directive on Electronic Commerce. What is this? Since 1996, the European Union has been developing legislation in the field of electronic commerce. In 1997, the European Commission adopted the European E-Commerce Initiative, and later this directive on certain aspects of information society services and electronic commerce in the international internal market. The e-commerce directive was adopted. This directive is based on the principles of the EU international market, including freedom of establishment and freedom to provide services, as well as provisions for the harmonizations of national legislation. The directive states that the fragmentation of national legislation may create obstacles to the development of the information society and may not ensure adequate protection of the rights and interests of individuals and legal entities. That is why it's necessary not only to harmonize the current legislation in the field of electronic commerce, but also to ensure a uniform legal regulation of this area. This directive on electronic commerce ensures the development of the internal market for information society services. Services provided at the individual request of a client at a distance, usually for a fee by means of electronic data transmissions and storage. In addition, the directive also includes services for providing online search and information access to databases, transmission and storage of information and exchange of commercial correspondence. According to this directive, member states cannot restrict the provision of information society services within the European Union. European Union legislation establishes the principles of responsibility of the country of origin of the services. The directive applies to services provided by suppliers from the European Union and doesn't apply to services provided from third countries. In this context, it is important for us to determine the country from which the service is provided. The directive, taking into account the case law of the European Union Court of Justice, defines the place of establishment of the service provides and as the place of actual economic activity, which must involve cost the establishment of a commercial enterprise for an unlimited period. According to this rule, the location of a service provider is not the place where its website data is actually located, but the center of its real economic activity, the place from which the relevant services are provided. The implementation of the principles of the European Union internal market is that the provision of information information services doesn't require prior authorization from public authorities. At the same time, the service provided must provide constant access to information about itself, including its company name, location, and email address. Outside the scope of the directive are the issues of taxation of economic activity on the internet. The European Union Directive on Electronic Commerce states that European Union consumer protection legislation also applies to electronic commerce. According to European Union law, advertising, this is emails and commercial messages, spam. Yes, we know about spam, that consumers receive in large numbers constitute in an invasion of privacy and are objectively. At the same time, on the other hand, it is one of the most effective ways to promote goods and services on the internet, which among other things contributes to the development of e-commerce. In European Union member states where commercial messages are allowed to be sent, systems for filtering maybe such mails, the opt-out system, it's called, should be developed to ensure that they are ignored by uninterested users. At the same time, such electronic messages should contain the necessary elements to facilitate such disregarded by users, and the receipt of such messages should not be accompanied by additional costs for users. The European Commission has started in 21 a discussion on the formation of European Union contract law, which also includes important issues of legal regulation of electronic contracts, which are intended to facilitate the conclusion of cross-border contracts. This issue of recognizing electronic contracts along with contracts in hard copy relates to private international law, as transactions concluded via the internet contain a foreign element, which raises by the questions of which law should be applied. Under European Union law, the principles of autonomy of the parties will apply, according to which the parties have the right to choose the contractor, and the country must closely related to the transaction is applied. In the process of drafting the European Union Directive on Electronic Commerce, the European Commission proposed to establish a conflict of law linked to the law of the country or service provider. But this proposal was not accepted by consumer protection societies. Actually, important in the issue of international jurisdiction under current European Union law, in the event of a dispute between a consumer of a service from one European Union
Just a moment, please, Oleksandra. Dear students, I would like to ask you to turn off your microphones, okay? Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. So equally important is the issue of international jurisdiction. Under current European law, in the event of a dispute between a consumer of a service from one European Union member state and its provider from another European Union member state, the consumer has the right to apply the card at the place of residence. This can lead to significant legal costs for service providers and they needed to conduct litigation in different countries. Since the directive establishes the obligation of European EU members state to encourage the development of alternative dispute resolution and interested in the creation of the European extrajudicial justice network. It's mean EEG net, which is to be used as a place to resolve conflicts between consumers and information service providers. In 2022, the European Parliament approved an initial draft law limiting aggressive advertising on the internet. What is this and what does this mean? it will regulate the activities of such tech giants as Google, Facebook, Amazon, and others. The new law, which will come into force in 2023, affects social media, app stores, video and music sharing services, travel sites, and other digital commercial platforms. The document prohibits online platforms from using sensitive information such as race, religion, and sexual orientation for targeted advertising. The new rules require services that allow users to opt out of tracking. Platforms will require to identify and remove illegal content and products, including hate speech of counterfeit goods. The draft law also provides for a ban on target advertising for minors and dark UX patterns. Companies that violate that rules face a fine of up to 6% of their global revenue, and this is very interesting. The Digital Services Act updated the existing e-commerce directive. At the time, many of today's social networks didn't exist. The authors of the initiative believe that the new legislation will help to stop hate speech, the spread of disinformation, and or the sale of counterfeit product online. Given the virtual nature of the space in which relations between different entities are manifested, the combination of high technology with purely pragmatic, as we can see, aspirations in this space, the privacy of ordinary users and other features, it is necessary to determine certain fundamental provisions for functioning in it. According to Article 16 of the e-commerce directive, entitled Codes of Conduct, the member states and the Commission encourage, specifically for the e-commerce sector, may contain the development of codes of conduct at community level by trade, professional and consumer associations of organizations, the voluntary submissions of draft codes at national or community level or to the Commission, the availability of these codes of conduct in electronic form in the language of the community, the notifications to member states at the Commission by trade, professional and consumer notifications, associations or organization of their evaluation, of course, of their codes of conduct and their impact of e-commerce practice, habits or customs, the development of codes of conduct in the field of protection of minors and human dignity. What is this? Member states and the Commission shall encourage the involvement of consumer associations and organizations in the development and implementation of codes of conduct in their area of interests. This complex area of legislation is characterized by a number of peculiarities due to the specifics of its scopes. These are, first of all, we can see the peculiarity of IT law, its supranational, cross-border nature. Therefore, the application of national legislation in the different environment may be complicated by a foreign element. When concluding relevant agreements, issues or jurisdiction conflicts of law, etc. arise. Relations in the digital environment are subject to various social regulators, moral and ethical norms, customs, etc. Law being only one of them. Striving to unify national legal approaches in the digital environment and develop the same rules for everyone, because the digital environment is the same for everyone regardless of nationality, citizenship or place of residence. The autonomy of users on the internet, which creates a psychological illusion of wide opportunities, and the lack of conscious personal responsibility for various manifestations of using the digital environment. National IT law as a complex branch of legislation. In addition to the above universal features, has a specific structure. After all, IT law is not clearly structured by institutions, and there is no coordinated system of external manifestation. Its structure is the absence of structure, of course. As a branch of law, IT law includes international legal instruments that have become an integral part of national legislation, national regulations that apply exclusively to the regulation of relations in the digital environment, laws and regulations, national regulations governing any sphere of social relations, taking into account the peculiarities of their functionality, maybe I can say, in the digital environment, laws and regulations. IT law and advertising, of course, what we can saw. The modern world is often compared to a supermarket where everything can be sold and everything can be bought. Advertising plays an important role in sales as a way to communicate information about goods, services, and jobs to potential buyers. Every day, advertising becomes more and more aggressive, as sellers spare no resources to increase their sales and profits. That is why legal regulation of advertising should be effective and flexible, of course flexible, balancing the interest of both sellers and consumers. It should be noted that modern online advertising is also divided into separate types. For example, researchers distinguish between display advertising, banner advertising, contextual advertising, social media promotion, geo-contextual advertising, viral advertising, product placement in online games, email as advertising, pop-ups and spyware, electronic bulletin, boards and participation in ratings, among others. The characteristics of each of these types are worth exploring, maybe I can say, in more detail. First of all, before choosing online advertising, types. Before choosing online advertising, an entrepreneur must create his or her own website, which can also be considered a form of advertising. This is a business card page that contains information about the person and his or her product, work, services, etc., as well as the contact information. Display advertising, in turn, is advertising that use textual and graphic advertising materials. It is places on relevant websites, advertising platform, which usually have a target audience. Before entering into a contract for the distribution of such advertising, the website's audience is researched by geographic, age, social, and other criteria. The time spent on the website and other data to determine how effective the advertising on this website will be. The research is carried out by analyzing cookies, files, we know about these, that are stored by a browser on a computer and contain various data about the sites that have been visited recently, as well as by using website traffic counters. The selection of potential customers is called targeting. Targeting and user data. What is this? As a result, you choose the site where the number of potential customers will be the highest. Retargeting is a way to repeat an advertising message to people who have already researched it and take certain actions that indicate interest in a product. Payment for such advertising is determined mainly per 1,000 impressions or per click separately. The concept of targeting has already become familiar and understood to almost every user of any social network. Currently, the largest information giants use about 52,000 personal characteristics of a person to identify his or her interest, character, weakness, and desires. Today, advertising platforms use it as one of the most effective marketing mechanisms because it is indeed extremely effective. targeted. However, I think it is worth looking at the possible dangers of targeting for users. First of all, targeting is usually based not only on the data provided by users of their own free will, but also on information automatically collected by a website or social network, such as online shopping or browser search history, level of activity on a social network, number of nature of likes and reposts, which is used to form a certain profile of a person, including his or her preference, psychological characteristics, maybe, etc. Often websites and social networks collect such information through their parties, so the users doesn't even know that his or her data left several months ago on a website, was transferred to a social network that offers him or her relevant, of course, advertising. Second, targeting can lead to discrimination and restriction of users. This possibly areas when social networks use a large amount of personal data, demographic data, personality traits, hobbies, etc. In practice, this is manifested in the cancelment of job offers due to a gender, skin color, origin, financial or marital status. In other words, based on the information collected, maybe, of course, the social network decides on its own which ads will be relevant, thus preventing the user from choosing on their own, which automatically, of course, limits the scope of their new requests of interests. Third, targeting. A great technology. Of course, this is a great technology for manipulating users' desires and opinions. On the one hand, it is showing ads for vegan desserts without sugar to people who lead this lifestyle and actively share it on social media. And on the other hand, it is playing on people's emotions and beliefs about the political future of their country. In particular, the Brexit of 2016 is quite illustrative. During the campaign, both supporters and opponents of Britain's exit from the European Union used so-called shadow advertising, meaning that it was displayed only to certain groups of social media users and was not available to others. Thus, based on demographic data, in particular on the analysis of knowledge about which party won the most seats in a particular constitutively, political ads were launched that were tailored to political beliefs and sympathies for certain political leaders in order to more actively engage residents in voting for the outcomes that politicians needed. Marketing technologies and targeting lead to such phenomena as a filter bubbles. Very interesting when the user is surrounded by and offered only monotone information with no diversity of opinions. On the other hand, the opposite effect of information overload may occur the presence of an extremely large amount of polarized and contradictory information, from which it is difficult to distinguish between true and false, which leads to confusions and I may say maybe uncertainty of the user regarding important economic, political, and maybe we can say about social and other users. Targeting, as you may have noticed, it is a rather complicated mechanism, so its structure can be divided into several levels of user profile formation, depending on the category of personal data. Targeting based on information provided by the user. This information is always used in targeting as users publicly and share it in social media. It includes romantic relationships, etc. And it is used to offer various cultural and political events, branded items for the home, clothing, restaurants, and other establishments. Targeting based on information collected automatically by social networks and websites. 1 minute. such information is collected through the use of technologies such as pixel-based and targeting and geo-targeting. Pixel-based targeting involves the use of tracking pixels, which consist of small pieces of code that are integrated into a website by its owner. When a person visits a website, their browser automatically sends a request to the server of a social network provider, such as Facebook or Instagram. Yes, we know about this, to obtain a tracking pixel. As soon as the tracking pixel is installed, the social network is able to track the user's activity on such a website. For example, you are in the season of discounts of the summer collection of your favorite clothing brand, for example, and you are already looking for a dress and maybe sandals. But since your paycheck is still a week away, you are just looking. In the evening, you go to check your Facebook feed, open an article about the benefits of green buckwheat and see, and for the very bag and sandals you want to buy, and you see the sandals. This is exactly how pixel-based targeting works. A vivid example of geo-targeting is offering maybe the nearest restaurants, shops, pharmacies, and other establishments. For example, you've come to enjoy the maybe architecture of Rome, for example, and have just checked into your hotel and decide to scroll through your Instagram feed. While doing so, you see an advertisement for an Italian restaurant with aromatic coffee and croissant. And when you open the page, you immediately see that it's 100 meters from the hotel and that you can get a free cocktail when ordering 2 pizzas. So you don't hesitate to go there for a delicious lunch, yes? The restaurant uses the geo-targeting technology offered by Instagram to target people who are within 2 kilometers for the first time in 6 or 20 months. Since users usually automatically agree to the determination of their geolocation by a social network, when they use it, social network uses data for marketing purpose as well. Targeting based on information generated by the data controller independently, based on the 2 types of information mentioned above. This about challenges, yes, of targeting. What I want to say, such information is essentially a collection of data that users share and that is collected by the above-mentioned technologies. This makes it possible to create a deeper and more detailed user profile, drawing conclusion about their hobbies, interests, and even weakness. For example, you love tennis or football and everything related to it. You actively follow various sports pages on social media and post news from the world of tennis or football. You try to keep track of the major tournaments all the time, and to do so, you downloaded a mobile application that helps you follow the results of your favorite players by registering there through your Facebook account. In this way, Facebook gets access to your activity in this application based on the information you share on your page and the information that Facebook automatically collects. You are offered sports betting. An important fact here is your psychological profile compiled by Facebook, because if you are a balanced and calm person, then betting ads will not impress you. However, if you are a rather maybe impulsive person, addictive person, such ads can lead to uncontrollable actions that you will regret in the future. Articles 8 to 10 of the General Data Protection Regulation clearly specify personal data that require special conditions of use. Article 8 refers to the data of children whose age, depending on the legislation of the member state, varies from 13 to 16 years. That is, any collection and processing, let alone marketing activities in relation to person under this age, can only be carried out with the permission of parents or legal guardians. In particular, Instagram doesn't allow anyone under 13 to create profiles at all. or block such profiles if it becomes aware of them. Article 9 and 10 deal with sensitive data about health, political, philosophical, and religious beliefs, sexual orientation, and criminal record. However, by using targeting, seemingly not sensitive data can turn into sensitive. For example, you decided to radically change your lifestyle and get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. So you go to Tibetan monks to reboot. After staying there for 3 months and renewing yourself, you decide to return home. You find a community of like-minded people and actively share your new life on social media, attended various events related to Tibetan philosophy, like and post seminars and workshops on this philosophy. Despite the fact that you do not directly state your philosophical beliefs, your actions such as liking and reposting philosophical events and photos obviously indicated the nature of your philosophical beliefs. Thus, for the purposes of targeting, such processing will be considered processing of sensitive personal data. Yes, sensitive data. Thus, the collection of personal data directly and through various technologies that can be used to create a complete portrait of a person without the targeted processing of sensitive data can often fall under Articles 8 to 10 of the GDPR, only with the express consent of the users. So, what are the legal grounds for using marketing technologies under the GDPR? Article 6 provides an exclusive list of legal grounds for collection and processing personal data. For marketing purposes, only two may be applied: the consent of the personal data subject and the legitimate interest of the controller. If it does not override the fundamental rights and freedoms of the personal data subject. If it does not override, therefore, the easiest and safest way for the controller will be to obtain, to my mind, consent for marketing activities. The types and nature of such activities should be specified in the cookies policy in a separate document called Privacy Policy Consent, where the users will have the opportunity to separately agree or refuse to collect and process his or her personal data for marketing purposes in addition to the above-mentioned documents. It is mandatory to have a cookies policy which describes in detail what cookies are, their types and purpose of use. Also, it is worth creating a cookies consent form which with the user can independently manage the use of different types of cookies. In the case of justifying the use of marketing mechanism and as a legitimate interest, the controller is obligated to provide substantial evidence that without this marketing activity, it will not be able to provide certain services and will even suffer losses. However, it is maybe not enough to simply provide certain services and will even suffer losses, because it is necessary to clearly define in writing what personal data is collected, to whom it is transferred, for how long and where it is stored, and the categories of personal data subjects. And to my mind, it's very interesting and it's very useful. It is also necessary to provide evidence that the legitimate interests of the company do not anyway limit the fundamental rights and freedoms of the personal data subject. For such a detailed justification, maybe, it is necessary to describe the company's activities and the relevant marketing mechanism, its importance and materiality. A separate exception is companies whose core business is based on the use of marketing technologies. For example, you want to go on a trip, but you don't know where exactly. And to decide, you use a website or mobile application that, based on your preferences, which you share with it, offers you a country or place, a hotel, available tickets for a certain data, etc. In this case, the legal basis for the use of marketing technologies is the obligation to fulfill the terms of the contract, Article 6, between this controller and the user. That is when you use such services, you automatically accept the terms of use of the website or application, which is a legally binding document. Who is responsible for using personal data for marketing? This issue usually depends on the specific purposes, scope of professional data processing and its nature. These are several options for allocation roles: controller or controller processor. In the first case, the company that uses marketing and the social network that provides it with the mechanism and already selected relevant information about users will be joint controllers in accordance with Article 26. The company determines the categories of persons, target audience, the social network through which the marketing is carried out based on the criteria provided the company. Independently decided which of the user's data to process, to whom to show, and which technologies to use for advertising. Thus, processing consequently liability in the event of a violation of the rights of a personal data subject of a personal data leak will be shared. In the second case, the company as the controller is solely responsible, as it may be independently determines the purposes and means of processing unless the breach or leak was caused by the procedure. Given the current conditions for using social media and the various marketing mechanisms they created, it also must be impossible to imagine such a situation. After all, social networks are not just a platform where personal data is collected, and the analysis select and offer ready-made categories of such data, classified by gender, age, interests, and other criteria to companies. This targeting is one of the marketing mechanisms using special technologies, brings significant results for companies. However, I may say that users must be notified of its use and their consent must be obtained unless there is a legitimate business interest or an obligation.
Alexandra, is it okay? Suddenly, your sound was off. But yeah, I can see. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. So about legitimate business interest or an obligation to fulfill the terms of contract with users. Let's go to banner advertising. Banner advertising, what is this? I think we all know that it's online advertising that is placed in the form of static or dynamic images, banners on websites. A banner is a graphic image in a JPG, PNG, GIF, or Flash format that contains a hyperlink to the advertised company or product. Different types of agreements exist for the placement of such advertising. In particular, an agreement on advertising on a website or a banner network, an advertising network of websites used to display banner advertising to a large number of participating websites at once. A contract can be concluded for a temporary advertising placement, flat fee. Fixed advertising placement for a specified period of time, or for subscription services. For this type of agreement, the most important thing is the effectiveness of the banner, which is determined by the ratio of the number of clicks on the ad to the number of impressions, click-through rate. Thus, the more clicks, the more effective the banner. According to the CTRE indicator, contracts can be divided into certain subtypes. In particular, the CPM, cost per mille agreement, is popular, which determines the price per sound views. It guarantees the advertiser the paid number of views of his ad. CPV, this is cost per visitor, provides for payment for each visitor individually attracted to the advertiser's website. The CPA, this is cost per action, condition determines the price for a certain specific user action, and it can be user registration, navigation within the site. filling out a form, paying for another, subscribing to an email newsletters, downloading a file, or any other actions that will be agreed upon by the parties and can be mathematically tracked by the site program. And the CPC, this is cost per sale. Terms implies payment for the sale of the advertised product. Usually the payment is determined by a percentage of the sales amount. Another agreement can be used to regulate the mutual display of each other's ads on partner side. What about? The terms of the agreement may determine to whom and how often such as ads are displayed. Advertising itself will be free of charge. A large network of partner banner sites can define the accumulated impressions as a kind of currency according to which certain advertising services can be transferred and sold. In case of detection of clicks, for example, and impressions fraud with the help of special programmatical boots, these impressions are burned or even the cooperation agreement is terminated. Let's go to the contextual advertising. Contextual advertising, what is this? This is advertising in which advertising information corresponds to the context of a website. In other words, it is advertising of goods on relevant thematic websites or advertising based on a keyword that the user searches for. This type of advertising is considered to be the most effective because the potential consumer is looking for it. To implement such advertising, search engines create their own contextual advertising system through which they may profit. For example, this is Google's Google AdWords. We know about this. Such contextual advertising systems place advertisement both and separate search result and on search result pages selected by the user. This mostly paid for under the CPC, cost per click contract. For the users clicking on an advertising link, it is also possible to sell keyword advertising space at an action which is won by the highest bidder for a click. For example, when searching for the keyword, maybe car, let's car, the first place in the search will be given to the car brand that is willing to pay the highest price. This is about contextual. About demographics and user behaviors. What is this? 1 minute. Having analyzed the data, you would like to point out something. Together with Malaysia and Thailand, Indonesia is among the top 3 fastest growing online advertising markets in Southeast Asia. The volume of contextual advertising in Indonesia, as I know, is twice as high as in Thailand. Today, business in Indonesia spend 1/3 of their marketing budget on online promotion, and by 2025, this figure is expected to increase to 50%. Indonesia is a leader in the region in terms of population, of which 3/4 use the internet on a regular basis, which is also the highest among neighboring countries. The GDP per capita, US 3,008, is lower than in most developed countries. All of the above allows all of the above allows is to conclude the launch of a new e-commerce project is provision and investments in contextual advertising will be profitable. It is better to create ads in the official language. Therefore, the first priority before launching and setting up Google Ads in Indonesia will to be find a native speaker, a quantified translator, or a local specialist with good Indonesia. Less than 4% of users in Indonesia access the internet from desktop computers. all others access the web via mobile devices. According to statistics, transactions in online commerce are most often made via desktop computers. The conversion rate in this segment is 2,000% higher than that of mobile devices. According to accumulated statistics, women are more active in the internet segment. They share among all users is 35%. The youngest audience, 15-24 years old, accounts for 31% of the total number of users. About half of them are over 25 and under 35 years old. And the 35-44-year-old group accounts for 16%. This age distribution of the audience with a significant predominance of young people should be taken into account when creating advertising creatives and ad copy. Before my research, I know the most popular type of advertisement in Indonesia is mobile video. Businesses are increasingly willing to buy such ads due to good audience engagement and high returns compared to other formats. Dynamic remarketing is highly effective in promoting online stores. Also, a new format, Performance Max, has already proven to be quite effective. Indonesia is actively digitalizing the banking sector, so the sphere of electronic payments is constantly growing. About 2,034 million people participate in online trading, so this is actually very widespread. Geo-contextual advertising is the same contextual advertising that additionally takes into account to users' location. As a rule, it is used on mobile phones and tablets and allows you to quickly find the closest goods and services, such as a restaurant or gas station, using a map. Social map, you can see this is about promotion, is also a type of advertising. Every entrepreneur can create their own page or group on a popular social network for free and use it to advertise their products, similar to a business card site. And if you use the targeting method and impose advertising on your page to unknown users, such advertising will become paid. For example, Facebook allows you to place ads for a selected group of users, calling them suggested post and marking them as paid, sponsored. Let's go to the viral advertising and product placement. What is this? Viral advertising is compared to the flu, which is transmitted from one person to another through a favorable environment. Unlike the above types of advertising, viral advertising is transmitted by users on their own, not imposed on them by ad distributors, and thus is free for charge. The most typical example of viral advertising is funny videos. Product placements in online games refers to the advertising of goods in game transactions. Such advertising is effective because players who are engrossed in the game lose to the conscious understanding that is advertising, and they feel like they already own their product. For example, a car brand of a certain game character. By the way, such advertising has signs of being hidden, so its use must be correctly identified for the consumer. Email can also be used like is advertisement, and now I tell you about this. So it is interesting that the first internet advertising is considered to have been carried out in 1974 with the help of the internet's predecessors, the ARPANET, Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, via email. For example, marketer Gary Tork sent an advertisement for a new computer model to users on the West Coast of the United States. This kind of mailing is called direct mail. direct mail, we know about this, and its essence is to send emails to a specific circle of people in targeted manner. It will be effective only if an appropriate databases of people interested in the product, potential consumers, and is collected before then mailing. Such advertising is free of charge, although the creation and processing of user database can be quite expensive, as such mailings require the concepts usually in the form of registration application, which includes a clause of the desire to receive such mailings. For example, this is a message to the company's regular customers about promotions and seasonal discounts. Simply put, one day you will receive an advertising price list, later maybe something in your email. If your email address contains such words as Lex, law, lawyer, jurists, etc., we will mostly receive notification about upcoming seminars, legal trainings, offers of cooperation, investment, etc., among all the advertising information. However, email advertising about furniture, car, restaurants, hotels are not excluded. Such ads are quite intrusive to the consumer. Sooner or later, I think people feel physiologically uncomfortable with ads that are sent to them without their consent. But these are not the worst consequence that can be expected from user. Internet email also sending such messages, a number of people without their proper, we know it may consent is spam. This name comes from the name of the brand of canned ham, spiced ham, which was supplied to soldiers of the US Allied armies after World War II, and was considered to be a product of poor quality and expiring. So spam, this product, was advertised through all possible means and uncontrolled by consumers in every store. Since then, the word spam, now we can go to the spam, the word spam start to be used in our life. And has been associated with intrusive advertisement. Most email systems block such advertising as is legal, as it violates the rules for using computer networks. Spams is prohibited by the laws of many countries. The term spam means electronic text and or multimedia messages that are intentionally sent to the consumer's email address or endpoint equipment in a bulk without the consumer's prior consent, except for messages from the operator or service provider regarding the provision of services. Consumers, when ordering and or receiving services, have the right to terminate the provision of services by the operator or provider that they did not order, including the sending of electronic text, multimedia, and voice messages and spam. Consumers are obligated not to make calls, order, offer to send, or distribute spam. Operators and providers are obligated not to distribute spam. The operator or provider may temporarily suspend the provision of services on its own initiative if it is established that the consumer is sending spam for the period specified in the contract. According to the law of Ukraine on electronic commerce, a commercial electronic message may be sent to a person without his or her consent only if he or she can refuse to receive such messages in the future. Pop-ups and spyware, let's talk about this, are quite similar to spam, but are considered harmful because they are distributed by expensive programs that penetrate the user's computer and are activated with viruses. Separately, these are rich media, videos and graphics on top of the page, pop under, this is ads and in a new browser window, and top line. Top line is a stretch marks over the page content. So the Opera system has created a program that blocks them. Ad blocking. Ad blocking is a prevalent practice among internet users, posing a challenge to online advertisers. It is important for business to consider countermeasures to mitigate the impact of ad blocking and Opera program. This is block intrusive advertising formats, providing a potential solution to the challenges posed by ad blocking. Types of spammers. What we know about this? Depending on the goals by the pursued, spammers are divided into gray and black spammers. Gray spam is advertising legitimate services or goods by means of unsolicited commercial information via internet mailboxes. Foreign language courses, haters, and exercise equipment are all gray spam. It is used mainly by small business. They do not have money for conventional advertising. Due to its anonymity, let's go to the black spam. Black spam is an excellent tool for fraud advertising illegal, counterfeit and counterfeit goods, distributing crimes. In addition, spam is means of spreading virus codes. In this case, the program can be located both in an attachment to an email and or website that opens via a link from a spam email. In addition, spam as a platform is often used by phishers to lure users to fake websites designed to steal confidential information. The most famous and high-profile example of such black spam is the case against the hacker group of E. Bogachev, with the US FBI has been investigating since 2009. The criminals spread a virus that infected a computer through fake emails and fake internet messages that, when clicked, tricked the system into downloading and indefect files. As a result, they obtained personal data of users and other confidential information of government, business, and banks, stealing a total of about $100 million. Of course, it is difficult to, maybe I can say, to overestimate the consequence of such advertising messages, but such situations should only encourage the authorities and legislators to ensure proper information security of the population. Modern methods of combating spam can be divided into organizational software and hardware and legislative. Let's consider the latter. Gray spam is more or less legal. Of course, it violates more than ever the so-called anti-spam legislation, but not all countries have such legislation either. The fight against black spam is more active, as its social danger is much higher and it often entails criminal liability. I can say that United States was the first country to introduce legislative restrictions on spam, starting in 1998. This is about anti-spam laws. So special spam laws began to appear in variety states. They provided for mandatory sender identification and an unscribable mechanism. Violation of this restriction is punishable by criminal, a fine up to $10,000 million or imprisonment for up to 5 years, and civil liability compensation to the recipient of $2,000 for each messages, and to the provided of up 25,000 per day of distribution. Later, this US experience was adopted by European countries. In Norway now, direct marketing using email is prohibited without the recipient's prior consent. In Finland, since 1999, there has been a law that allows sending information only to those individuals who have previously subscribed to it. In the 20s, the Council of Europe Convention of Cybercrime and two directives of the European Parliament and Council on e-commerce in the internal market and the protection of privacy in the electronic communication sectors were adopted. The jurisdiction of both of these directives is very limited, as they, maybe I can say, leave it up to countries to determine the means to ensure effective spam prevention and the appropriate supervisory authorities. In some countries, this is the responsibility of the privacy commissioner, while in others, it is the responsibility of the maybe consumer commissioner of the National Telecommunications Regulatory Authority. However, I think thanks to this directive, many European countries have created and ratified their own law against cybercrime and spam. While in Europe, we can see about global impact, and the United States, the adoption of anti-spam laws peaked in 2023 in Eastern and Latin American countries, and it happened a few years later. Obviously, legislators in different countries have learned from each other's experience, as anti-spam laws in different countries have common features, as you can see in my slide. Many anti-spam laws are characterized by the following two key points. Opt-in principle: the newsletter should not be sent to the user if he or she hasn't subscribed to it. And opt-out principle: the user should always be able to unsubscribe from the newsletter. So what about this? The opt-in principle, the most important element of anti-spam laws, has been adopted almost everywhere. However, there are differences and limitations. For example, in the UK, the law only applies to emails sent to users' private email addresses, meaning that spam sent not work email addresses is not covered by the anti-spam law. In Germany, promotional emails are allowed if the users has previously purchased something from the advertiser. Many anti-spam laws share common elements, but also have variations based on regional requirement and practices. Can spam act? One of the most famous anti-spam laws in the American Can Spam Act, it provides the following basic requirements for email advertising. What is this? Do not use false or misleading information in the email header. The from, to, and routing information, including the source domain, name, and email address, must be accurate and identify the person or common sending the message. Do not use a false subject line. The subject line should accurately reflect the content of the message. Mark the message as an advertisement, indicate the location. The message must contain the sender's real physical address. Notify recipients of how to opt out of receiving future email from the sender. The notification must contain a clear and understandable explanation of how the recipient can opt out of receiving email. Properly fulfill recipient's request to unsubscribe from the newsletter. The request must be fulfilled within 10 days, only 10 days of receipt. It is prohibited to demand payment or other personal information except for email address for fulfilling the request. To control the actions of other persons committed on behalf of the sender. The company whose product or service is being maybe advertised, the advertising company are jointly and severally liable for the damage caused. And the law, of course, also prohibits the collection of email addresses by browsing websites and automatic address matching. The penalty for violating the Can Spam Act may include fines and even imprisonment. The most stringent at the moment is the Australian Spam Act 2003. This about this Spam Act. One moment. It requires that the users must be provided with an information about the sender and the possibility of unsubscribing, and prohibits the use of software to collect email addresses. In addition, the recipient's prior consent is required. The fines for spamming set out in law can reach 1 million Australian Australian dollars, about 2,000 US dollars, for each unsolicited email sent to multiple addresses. At the same time, the Australian government inactively engaging providers and ordinary users in the fight against spam. In particular, the latter have created a convenient tool for sending spam complaints. Just press on button to send a sample of an unweighted email to government agencies tasked with fighting spammers. China's 2006 anti-spam law takes into account the experience of other countries in this area, and it is also contains several interesting innovation. The regulation on internet email services is based on a combination of opt-in and opt-out principles. In addition, the law regulates the activities of ISPs before starting to provide email services, and ISP must register and obtain a license from the government. For various violations, I think that ISPs can be fined and deprived of their license. And electronic bulletin, what is this? This is the last type of advertising. This is our websites that operate on the principle of a regular bulletin board. They contain relevant advertising information. Participation in ratings is not considered a popular method of advertising, as the credibility of most rating is questionable by users. Regardless of the type of online advertising, it must comply with the same rules, I think, that govern traditional advertising in the country where the website is registered. However, it is worth noting that due to the technical features of the internet, control over compliance with this legislation is quite limited. Thank you very much. My lecture is come to the end.
Oleksandra, thank you very much for your presentation and your lecture. And as I can see in the chat box, there are a few questions for you. Do you have access to the chat box?
Yes, 1 minute, please. Now I will stop video to my, because I have very not stability internet. Was now 1 minute. I try to. Dima, for my I can't see this.
Окей, ну, если хотите, я могу прочитать вслух вопрос.
Если можно, да.
Да, конечно. Окей. Mr. Abdul asks, could you delve into how the evolving landscape of internet advertising intersects with consumer privacy concerns, and how educators can equip students to navigate these ethical and regulatory complexities in the digital marketing sphere?
Okay, I understand. About internet advertising, and the problem of the privacy, it's very interesting because now in internet, in every day we have more over and over something like spam and new diseases. And for example, for the last time in my faculty, we have all our lectures on the platform Microsoft Teams, and my students, they pay for me their works to the Microsoft Teams sent to me. And one student came to our group and deleted all their students' works. And this is, I think, it's of course, was the ethical complexities and regulatory in the digital marketing, and how we can decrease this. I think only by law, only by administrative or criminal prosecution, only by no, and I think that it might be provided by laws. In other ways, we haven't. Dima?
Thank you. And another question from Kainan. Sorry if it's incorrect pronunciation. That considering the dynamic nature of internet advertising, how do we balance the need for effective marketing strategies with the ethical considerations of consumer privacy and data protection, especially in light of evolving regulations and technological advancements?
Okay, thank you. This question is about the first, I think, only just accepting new acquaintance, only just accepting new laws, only by on the law sphere. In other ways, to my mind, we don't have.
Thank you. And another one from Faiz. In exploring internet advertising, could we discuss how the integration of artificial intelligence and machine learning impacts targeting strategies, and how advertisers can maintain transparency and accountability amidst concerns over algorithmic biases and privacy breaches?
It's very interesting. I am a law teacher. Yes, I am not a technical. I don't have something technical knowledge about IT or about machine learning impacts, but now if we will say about teaching, students also take into account intelligence. Yes, they use this in their works, and now all the our machines, they can talk to us that this was made by intelligence. That is why I think that we have to again in the laws something new, etc., to explain that law might be transparent, artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Thank you very much. As I can see, there are no questions. No more? Yeah. Dear Novita, I suppose that was the last question.
I can знову ж таки start my video, okay? Все,
Чудово. So, dear colleagues, dear STEKOM University, just a moment, please. I would like also turn on my video. Dear colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunity to conduct this lecture. And I would like to thank you, all of you, dear colleagues and dear students of STEKOM University, for your interest and your involvement in this mutual exchange. And of course, Oleksandra, thank you very much for your time, for your presentation, for your such rich speech. And I hope see you soon So have a nice day and goodbye.
Thank you, Dmitry. Thank you, all colleagues. Novita, I am for me, it was very pleasure to take today my lecture. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Bye.
thanks so much for bye-bye.